Hello friends, welcome to the channel. If you're interested in our stories, please subscribe to our channel. This happened when I was 12. I was home alone for one night since my parents were in town with friends. I was in my room around 4:30 a.m. When I was walking them to the sound of knocking coming from the front door, I wasn't going to answer it, but when I looked down the people, there wasn't anyone near. Shockingly, put on my shoes and sweatshirt just in case I need to get out of the house to the back door. I will jump up here, and I saw a guy who will give me in his early 50s standing about a yard away. But I didn't get a good view of his face, so I couldn't tell who he was. I even saw a knife tucked into his jean. Then he took 4 steps towards my house as possible. Don't get me wrong when I say that. Bond before leaving the house. I didn't put on any pan. Yeah, I know. It's weird, right? But I didn't want to waste any time. But thankfully, I was still wearing my tidy wide hang door. I go to the sidewalk and ran for what felt like a mile. I was running for now too long, and I then walked for about 5 more blocks. It's my family found the police car. The officer in the car rolled down the passenger window and asked me any pants. I told him there was a guy at the front door of my house with a knife, and I left to go get help. I told him I didn't have any pamphlet because I didn't want to waste time and that I was scared for my wife. He told me it'll be okay, and then he told me to get into his car so he could drive me home and then take a walk to the situation, my garden, his car, and he drove me. Oh my God, to the house. They offered me to stay in the car until we got the guy, just for my safe day. After about 3 minutes, and I went to go see who the guy was to try to get into my house, I was absolutely shocked when I saw who it was. That was my mom's ex-boyfriend. Apparently, he wanted to come to the house in the middle of the night to split her throat to get revenge on her for dumping him. That guy was a knife. Actually told me that I was other target if she wasn't there. He then said to me, "Otherwise you would have been dead." The officer put the guy in his car, and he came back to me, and I told him he'll be going to my mom's ex-boyfriend. I said that he'd call my parents to come over and they'd tell them about it. I gave him my mom's number. He called her, and then they said they were on their way. About 5 minutes later, my parents came home, and the officer told them what happened. Afterwards, I told my parents, just told them I was scared for my wife and didn't want to waste time. They understood. Well, thank the officer got taken away. I went in the house with my parents, sat down in the living room, and explained to them a second time the entire story. Hey, we're just glad I wasn't hurt or worse. I'm now 23, and I have my own play. And I always make sure my place is locked before leaving for any reason or even going to bed. We haven't heard from my mom's ex-boyfriend since, and we hope it stays that way. I never like being home alone, especially at night. The creaks and groans are the old house scene to take on a wife of their own, echoing throughout the empty rooms like ghostly whisper. On this particular evening, my parents are gone out for a dinner party, leaving me with the usual instructions to lock up and stay safe. As the clock ticked away, I tried to distract myself with a movie. Shadows around the living room, feeling settling in my stomach. Every small noise made me jump. In the wind outside rattle the windows like a chorus of distance whisper, and I'm sitting feeling lingered in the air. Suddenly it kills one through the room, and I notice there's a giraffe to seem to come from the hallway. I dismissed it, attributing this sensation to the old house's choir. Just when I closed my eye, I heard something soft, almost imperceptible. It was footstep. My eyes not open, and I screamed Alyssa and intentional frozen in bed. My ears tuned to the haunting, unable to resist. I can't possibly plug out of bed, my bare feet meeting the cold floor. The hallway stretched down before me, filtering through the curtain. The footsteps continued, growing louder with each passing moment against my better judgment. I followed the sound, a want performing in my throat. The steps led me down the corridor and into the heart of the darkness, and a sense of foreboding washed over me. As I approached the end of the hallway, the footsteps abruptly ceased. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there trembling, my eyes straining to pierce the shadows. That's when I saw it, a figure and indistinct, standing just beyond the reach of the feeble moonlight. My horn raced, and it killed random my spine. It was Speaker, then turned to face me. Panic consumed me, and I stumbled backward, which leading to the safety of my room, shallow and rapid, and surely after I heard firemen until the flashing lie they call my parents you now. The police came out of my house with a very skinny and creepy-looking guy. They took him away, and I never saw him again after that night. I know I might have people out there would stay home alone at a very young age due to their parents working night shift, but in my case, I was never able to stay home alone. One day when I was 15, thought I was old enough to stay home alone. My parents were going to the store really quick to get some last-minute things for dinner. I was too lazy to go just for a couple of items, and wanted to stay home and watch a movie that I had recorded on TV. After wanting to my mom that they weren't going to be gone for a long time, I convinced her to let me stay. She was leaving and telling me 1,000 times to make sure the door was locked and did not open the door for anyone. I've been rushed into the living room and turned on the TV. Our home has 2 doors. There's a door on the right side where the driveway is, and a door on the left side where the living room is. We don't ever use the left door, and this is something all of our family and friends know. If I ever had a friend coming over, I always make sure they knew to knock on the right side door. Amen. When we get deliveries, I always leave a side note saying to please use the rain door. My family and I make jokes about the west side of our home looking abandoned since we don't use it. My mom focuses on cleaning the right side. Anyway, it'll turn on the TV and lay down the sofa. I suddenly heard a loud knock on the left side door. I'm hot, thinking maybe it was the TV. Then I heard it again. I turned off the TV and ran towards the hallway. I didn't dare to look out the window. I was scared that it would have been more noticeable as I was in the hallway I was taking towards the door. It felt like I could see how the door vibrated each time the personnel sign was knocking on the door. I didn't know what to do or who it could be. Everyone I know knows to use the Wi-Fi door. I was so scared that my legs gave up on me. I walked at the door. The knockings and got even louder. I don't even think it was a knock anymore. It was more like full-on punches. After what sounded like an hour and eventually stopped, I sat there crying. When I suddenly heard the right sign then open, it was my dad. I woke up at I actually felt anger that my parents did this to scare me, genuinely worried and asking why I was crying. I told him what happened, and after he clarified that it wasn't him or my mom who was knocking. Hey, tell me to my mom kept saying. Washington alone. How are we going to live with that? So she apparently made my dad drive back to the house to get me. If I came outside and looked at my mom in the car with a worrying look, started to really wonder, fine made to da. Did the knocking really happen? Or deep down was I just really scared to actually stay home alone? Damn the car. I asked my parents if they saw anyone walking as they reached the house royale out there. The story happened to me back in 2008 when I was 11 years old. I normally have a terrible memory. Behind this event was so dramatic for me that I can remember it as if it happened yesterday. I just gotten home from school, ate a snack, and decided to go take a nap, and my parents had decided to let her come and live with us. It was a good decision because there would be an adult at the house when I got home from school, even though my parents had just recently started allowing me to stay home by myself. They still didn't really like the idea. Most of the time, my grandmother would always be home in the evenings when I got home. On this day, however, she was out running errands, which meant I had the household myself, which I really like. During that time, I got some packages off of the porch. After that, I ate my snacks and I think I sat down and watched a little television. I can't remember exactly. I ended up going to my room to take a nap since I was tired. How many minutes by my parents wouldn't be home from work until later. I took my shoes off and crawled into bed 15 minutes. When I heard someone open the front door downstairs, I thought I may have been my grandma. No one in our household used that door. We always used the door in the garage instead. This sort of freaked me out, especially with the fact that I didn't even hear the garage door go up. I've been yelled out to see if it was my grandma. There was no response. I yelled for her again. There was still no answer. I continued to lay in my bed, and for a second door opener wasn't working or something. It wasn't possible for some random person to just walk into our house uninvited. Or so I thought. I closed my eyes and attempted to go back to sleep. I didn't even get the phone of sleep until the door to my room opened. I sat up in my bed thinking it was my grandma. It was not my grandma, it was a man. A random man that I never seen before in my life. I was frozen. Hey, just stood in my doorway staring at me. I continued to land on my back on mute. I was frozen and played. We both just stared at each other for what seems like forever. I know you're probably wondering why I continue to lay in the bed despite an intruder being in my room. I knew that if I tried to run, he would be able to catch me. There was nowhere to run to because he was standing right at my doorway. We both continued to have a stare down. Hey, didn't even move. Hey, just stood at the doorway not doing anything but just staring daggers at me. I expected any moment that he would warn towards me and do only God knows what. To my horror, that's exactly what happened. He began to step towards my bed. I shouted at him to get out, an evil groomish on his day. I was paralyzed with fear and I had no idea what to do. I just kept yelling at him to get out. He then shouted at me to shut up. I was frozen. Doing something horrendous to me in my own bedroom didn't even seem real. When he got towards my dad, I did the only thing that I could think of, and I threw my blanket over his head and made a run for the door. I took my other hand, and I scratched his hand with my fingernail, the living hell out of me, punch on my head and jaw with the most painful thing I'd ever experienced. At the time, I was only 11 years old, and I weighed no more than 80 pounds soaking wet. This man was way bigger than me, and him being on top of me was smothering me and cutting off my ear supply as he put his hands around my neck. I was surprised at what he was about to do. The bathroom was about to fucking strangle me. When he put his hands around my neck, he began to squeeze. I grabbed and pissed them off. I could feel my ear supply begin to cut off, cliché, but I literally felt a life training out of me. I could feel myself getting weaker and weaker, as if I was going to either pass out or die at any moment. It's no exaggeration when people say they have watched their lives flash before their eyes. At that moment, I was determined not to accept the fact that I could be murdered in my own home. Did the only thing that I could think of. And how was the play dead? As it was spring going there, I began to close my eyes and make my whole body go limp as if I was a rag doll. That was the only thing that I could think of. And it seemed to work because he released his hands from my throat and on my limp body to the ground. I then felt to stand up and even kick my motion with body. I guess to make sure I was there, me, and he was answered away from my face. As the intruder stood over me, his heavy breath filled the room, pounding in my ears, surrounding out any other noise. Fear flowed all throughout my vein, but I knew I had to gather my strengths and find a way to survive. Vibe. I can't officially open my eyes, hearing up the man who had just tried to take my wife. His face was contorted with anger and mama, his eyes still with adornedness but sent shivers down my spine. He saw me clear as day. Open my eyes. My act was up. He knew I was still alive. I knew that I couldn't let him win. I had to fight back, summoning every ounce of courage I had left. I must forget. Weak voice completed with him not to kill me. I informed him how my parents loved me, and if I died it would run them anyone that he had been there. He only sneered, his lips curling into a sinister smile. Hey, Linda, my face. And he told me that there was no way he can let me live after I just seen his face. His words sent a surge of adrenaline through my body. I knew that I couldn't reason with him, but that I had to find a way to escape. I scanned the room, desperately searching for anything that could help me. Sitting on my bed, flying table towards the lamp. The intruder wants to make the lamp with all my strength, connecting with his head. I stumbled backward, but I was not able to see his full reaction due to the fact that I took off running after I'd hit him. Me forward. Steps behind me, closing in fast. I had to find a way to escape. If I reached the top of the stair, I made a split-second decision. I knew this decision can possibly kill me. I lived over the banister hoping to catch him off guard. The phone was painful and unmanned to me at the moment. Fracture my leg. The jump was painful. Activated. I continued running towards the front door. With a burst of adrenaline sprawled out into the street. I didn't even attempt to look back, fearing that it would be right behind me. I ran a spa from my trembling legs to carry me, tears screaming down my face, praying for someone to answer. Walk away. I knew the neighbor I referred to as Nadine. She was a woman who had been to my house a couple of times, and she was friends with my mom. Once she opened the door, her eyes widened in shock at the sight of me trying to kill me. Nadine quickly offered me inside, calling the police and comforting me. Yeah, what's over? And my whole body was trembling. My leg was also in so much pain that I could barely stand after the adrenaline at 5 finally worn off. The police named me wanted to arrive to Nadine's house. I was quickly rushed to the hospital to be treated for my injury. At the hospital, I gave the police the detailed account of the horrifying event that unfolded in my own home. They assured me that they would do everything in their power to catch the intruder and bring them to justice. I found out that I had fractured my leg when I jumped from the banister. The doctor had informed me that as a result of me running on my leg, I had made the fracture even worse. My parents rushed home from work to the hospital, their faces edged with worry and fear. They helped me timely terror ring down their faces if they realized the danger that I faced alone in our own home. It was the best feeling in the world to see my parents that he wanted so badly to get his hands on this guy called calm and collected guy. But that day I saw another flight of him that was a bit frightening. My grandmother was extremely apologetic, and she blamed herself for not being home on time. I reassured her that what had happened had nothing to do with her, and that I wasn't mad at her. News of the incident spreads throughout the community. Neighbors rallied together, offering support and assistance to my family. The sense of unity and compassion was overwhelming, and it helped us to begin to heal from the trauma that we had endured. As the day is turning the week, the police investigation intensified. Interviewed witness that, and tirelessly searched for any leads that can help identify the intruder. The fear of him returning haunted my every thought, consumed me. Go away. I began to regain a sense of normalcy. Therapy sessions helped me rebuild the trauma and rebuild my shattered confidence. The physical storm is healed, but the emotional wounds would take much longer to mend. Weeks passed. Finally made a breakthrough done before for petty offenses. To my safari, he had never been walked up for murder or assault. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Any implant guilty for his attack on me forgot to walk it after grabbing the packages off the porch. And even more startling revelation was that we have just 2 doors down from us. Hey, apparently want to stay with his next girlfriend after he had attacked me. I had never seen him in our neighborhood before. As a matter of fact, many of our neighbors claim that they had never even knew that he lived in the neighborhood. Knowing that he was behind bars for on a sense of closure about the memories of that fateful day would forever be etched in my mind. I have survived a nightmare, but host determined to not let it define me or let it take over my life. I never wanted to be a victim warrant. It has made me someone powered and less like a helpful stick dumb. Nowadays 26. I vowed to never be a victim of a crime like that again, or to ever have my wife threatened. Though the scars of that day would never fully fade, I learned to live with them, my resilience and the power of the human spirit. I'd face the darkest of moments and emerge stronger than ever. I don't see myself as a hero or anything, but more so just someone who did whatever they had to do to survive. And thank God I did. Hey one, that's about it for today's story. Dear friends, thank you for staying with us until the end of this video. Have a good night.